today follows on from the famous visitation of the angel Gabriel to Mary, which was a fun time for her. After all, here comes an angel, a big enough event in itself, who then tells her she is pregnant. Big shock. But to cap it all, they then tell her that her cousin Elizabeth, who is frankly pretty old at this point, and who has been trying to have a kid for ages, so is known to be barren, has been pregnant for 6 months. I can't imagine Mary's mind racing. Me, pregnant? I've never had sex. Elizabeth pregnant? At her age? Surely not. Can't be true. The other part of the story there is that Gabriel previously visited Zechariah and told him Elizabeth would get pregnant, even at her age, and have a child, and that they should call him John. Now Zechariah, being a practical kind of bloke, wasn't convinced, and so he was struck dumb until the baby was born. Which to me seems a little bit harsh. Just because you question someone you get struck dumb. But anyway, so Mary goes to see Elizabeth to see if it was all true. But there's nothing like having confirmation of a divine message. And this was pretty conclusive evidence. A 60-year-old woman with a 6-month baby bump. I mean, that was pretty much unheard of in those days. Well nigh on impossible, I would have thought. When she gets there, she says hello, and we hear that Elizabeth feels the baby react. It leaps within her. Now, there's obviously two possibilities of that. Either the baby really did not like Mary's voice, and so it was kind of the equivalent of banging on the ceiling saying, "Oh, you keep the noise down." Or there was some sort of recognition, some sort of connection. I mean, I suppose it is possible that Mary had a really bad, screeching, annoying voice. I don't remember anywhere in the Bible where it describes her voice. But I think the main point is that there was a connection, an instant recognition, which indicates to me that there is a part of all of us that is linked, that even before we are born, we are connected to those around us in a very real way. That we feel those connections, perhaps more intensely as babies than at any other time. After all, babies, as witnessed with Robbie earlier, tend to be all emotion and feeling, until the world starts to work on them, and they get caught up in the noise and the bustle of modern life. But this reading is not really about Elizabeth. It's not about Mary, but about John. And I'll digress slightly here. It's really interesting to me that John is only 6 months older than Jesus. I always imagine John the Baptist as a craggy old man coming out of the desert, declaring Jesus is coming, and Jesus as a young, kind of clean-cut Jew. So how funny that they are so close in age. And I would expect that they knew of each other, even if they'd never met before, because, as we heard, Elizabeth was Mary's cousin, so they're part of the same family. But we are at the point in the story when John has been born. His father Zechariah can now speak, yay, having reached the cut-off point for his silence. And he goes on to prophesy about God and his son and the coming of Jesus. By his son, I mean Zechariah's son, obviously John. And that's all good stuff. But I'm struck by the one line near the end of the reading. It is a question that gets asked. What then is this child going to be? It seems strange wording. Not who will this child become, or what will this child become even. It seems to go beyond that and have a sense of importance. Far beyond what is usual for these occasions. After all, it's normal to ask parents what they hope for a child, what they think their plans are for the child. I mean, one of the most common questions you get is what do you want your child to grow up to be? A doctor, a lawyer, or in the old adverts, someone with an ology, But this question was, what then is this child going to be? There seems to be a finality about it. a feeling that John is going to be something special, whether he really wants to or not. Something incredible. And it seems to leave no wiggle room, no doubt. Now, these days, it's all too often we hear about pushy parents. Pushing their children to succeed, sticking them on TV, making them do beauty pageants. And, we all tend to kind of shake our heads and pity the child that's been forced into these things. But in this case, it isn't just the parents, but the whole of Judea. The whole of Judea are expecting great things from John. They are putting on him their belief that God has marked him in some way, chosen him for something special. And they're piling on him their expectations. So I'm going to shake my head and say, poor kid.
Yeah.
I mean, before he's even born, people are starting to talk about him. And then once he's born, that's it. Everybody thinks he's going to do marvellous things.
Fighting over his name and that.
Yeah.
Imagine.
So, is it any wonder that we hear that he then went to live in the desert and stayed there until the day he appeared to the people of Israel? I think with all that pressure, I would run off to the desert and hide as well. If I were. Well, perhaps not the desert, a bit warm for me, but somewhere remote, somewhere. So there are so many things going on in this small story, so many moving parts, so many different connections. There is Elizabeth getting pregnant at an age that was unthinkable in those days. There is Zachariah being struck dumb for doubting. There is Mary being told about Elizabeth and about her own pregnancy. There is John being born, and these things kind of resolving themselves. There is the pressure of expectations, the expectations of those around John, and there is that connection and recognition. And let's not forget that alongside all of that, there is the fact that Mary and Elizabeth were related. So it seems this one small story has connections within connections. So many different things in one relatively short story. In Luke's Gospel, all these events happen in a few short passages leading up to the birth of Jesus. Almost like a preamble. So what can we learn from these events? What is the central message to be taken from them? Well, I think there's way too many threads here to pick one as definitive. So I'll just resort to the one I picked, obviously. For me, it is the connections. The thought that we are all connected by some sort of spark inside us. Whether we call it the Holy Spirit, the kingdom seed, or our soul, I believe there is something of the divine, something of our Creator within each and every one of us. After all, I believe we are all formed by the same force, the same nature, the same power within the womb. The Bible tells us that. It mentions being formed by God within our mother's womb. So it seems likely to me that there is something that connects us all. Sadly, that's not the end of it though. As it is up to each of us to nurture that connection. Not only to God, but to each other. Jesus and John felt it. When they met later for the baptism, they felt it very strongly. The disciples felt it. Why else would they just give up everything and follow a carpenter's son? And it wasn't just a Jewish thing either. People from all places, all walks of life felt it when they met Jesus. And if we look into John's life a little more, we see that it was the same for him. People were drawn to him, people followed him. He also had disciples. So 2 men, 1 family, both were told strong in the Spirit. I mean, the part of the reading we haven't heard, which follows on from, it says that John grew strong in the Spirit. And we've heard repeatedly that Jesus was strong in the Spirit. So perhaps it is that strength that makes the connection easier, more powerful. Kind of like a magnet drawing others who are in touch with that spark of creation within themselves. Drawing them together, drawing them to John, to Jesus, but more importantly, drawing them to each other. I truly believe that we are all connected, that within everything there is a small piece of our Creator. The difference between us and other parts of creation is that we have the ability, the supposed intelligence, the power, if you like, to grow that spark or diminish it. To, as the Bible puts it, become strong in the Spirit, or to deny it and weaken it. Just as we have the ability to draw closer to God or move further away, even to the point of muting our connection. But whatever we do, I believe that the connection is still there and always will be. It is an entirely personal choice whether to strengthen it, to be more like John, more like Jesus, draw closer to God, or to weaken it and, in some ways, go it alone. I, for one, plan on continuing to work on strengthening it because, frankly, I think I need all the help I can get in life. And what better help is there, what better support and guidance can we ask for than the one who created us? So for me, this short reading is part of much bigger events, a much more challenging idea, that absolutely everything is connected, that everything does happen for a reason, and that all those years ago, a guy named John had it all figured out and was content just to play his part in the story. And as I said, he was 6 months older than Jesus. And the final thing that came to me is that given the dispute over exactly when Jesus was born, the month, etc., we don't know. I mean, quite possibly, John was the actual Christmas baby and not just the other one. Thank you.